Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Jason, and for 3.5 years, I thought I had a good marriage. I thought I had a wife who loved me, a future that was solid. I was wrong. One night, I found out the truth. And instead of fighting, instead of begging for an explanation, I did something else. I walked away. This is the story of how I disappeared and never looked back. After 3.5 years of marriage, I discovered my wife, Emily, was cheating on me. And instead of fighting for a woman who had already thrown me away, I made a decision that would change everything. I disappeared. It's strange how quickly your entire world can shift. One moment, you're living in what you believe to be a happy marriage, making plans for the future, dreaming of the home you'll buy together. The next, you're staring at undeniable proof that your wife, the woman you build a life with, is betraying you. It happened in February 2018. I still remember the exact moment, the cold grip of realization tightening around my chest like a vice. I had been traveling for work as I often did, but I had just returned home. Emily and I had always been busy people. She was climbing the corporate ladder, working long hours, but I never thought much of it. We still laughed together. We still shared meals. Our life wasn't perfect, but whose is? That night, I found out just how blind I'd been. She came home late, like always. Claimed she had a work event. She breezed in, looking effortlessly stunning, like she hadn't just spent the evening with someone else. I should have suspected something sooner. The late nights, the distant look in her eyes, the way she would snap at me over the smallest things. But I didn't. It wasn't until I helped her carry in the groceries that the first red flag smacked me right in the face. Something pink caught my eye as I reached into the back seat of her car. At first, I thought it was a receipt or a piece of cloth. But when I pulled it out from under the passenger seat, my stomach twisted into a knot so tight I could hardly breathe. It was her bra. Not just any bra, one from her favorite boutique. A brand she only wore for special occasions. I held it in my hands, staring at it like it was a ticking time bomb. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it fell out her bag. Maybe she had changed in the car for some reason. But I knew better. Emily never changed in her car, and she certainly never threw her clothes around like that. The realization hit me like a freight train. She had been with someone. My hands started to shake. My pulse pounded so hard in my ears that I almost didn't hear her voice behind me. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head, her expression full of feigned concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." For a second, I considered confronting her right then and there, holding up the bra and demanding the truth. But something inside me told me to wait. Instead, I forced a smile, shoved the bra into the grocery bag, and carried it inside. I don't know how I managed to keep my face neutral. My entire body was screaming. I felt sick, betrayed, but most of all, I felt like a fool. That night, as she casually chatted about her long day at work, I sat at the dinner table, nodding at the right moments, pretending like I wasn't dying inside. But I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to accuse her without proof. I was going to find out exactly what she was doing, who she was with, and how long this had been going on. And once I had my answer, I was going to leave, quietly, without a word, without looking back. Looking back, I wonder how I didn't see the signs earlier. Maybe it was denial. Maybe I was just too caught up in the life we were building, the one I thought was real. But now, every moment, every conversation, every small change in Emily's behavior felt like pieces of a puzzle I had refused to put together. I met Emily 5 years ago at a friend's cookout. It was one of those casual gatherings, the kind where people drink cheap beer and grill burgers while swapping stories about their jobs and weekend plans. She stood out immediately, not just because she was beautiful, though she was, but because of the way she carried herself. Confident, sharp, like she was always the most interesting person in the room. And for some reason, she was interested in me. At first, I didn't question it. I was just another guy working my way up in my career, a little rough around the edges, not the kind of guy women like her usually noticed. But she did. She liked my humor, my directness, the way I wasn't intimidated by her intelligence. We talked all night, and by the time we left, I knew I was hooked. We moved fast. Too fast, maybe. Within a few weeks, we were practically inseparable. The kind of relationship where clothes hit the floor the second we walked through the door, where we stayed up talking until sunrise, where every touch felt like a promise. 18 months later, we were married. At first, life was good. More than good. We had a beautiful apartment, good jobs, and plans for the future. I worked as a director in a technical sales company, which meant occasional travel, but I always made sure to come home. Emily had an even more demanding job, climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone I had ever seen. I admired that about her, her ambition, her drive. But over time, something shifted. At first, it was small. Arguments over stupid things. Who left the lights on? Why the dishes weren't done. Then, the late nights started. The work outings. The dismissive attitude whenever I asked her about them. "This is how it is in my field," she'd say, rolling her eyes. "I have to pay my dues. And besides, you travel for work too, so why does it matter?" Except my travel was different. I was gone for a few days at a time, once every 5 weeks. She was out almost every other night. I should have seen it. I should have known. Instead, I convinced myself that she was just stressed, that our marriage was just going through a rough patch. I even tried to fix it. One Friday, I went all out. Cooked her favorite meal, set the table with candles and wine, bought her flowers. I wanted to remind her that we were still us. She walked in the door, barely looked at the table, and sighed. "Oh, babe, I wish I could stay, but I have to meet some coworkers at a bar. It's important." She didn't even sit down. Just took a quick shower, threw on a stunning dress, and barely noticed when I didn't say a word. That was the moment I knew. Not just suspected, knew. It wasn't work. It wasn't stress. She was seeing someone. I watched her walk out the door, her heels clicking against the floor, her perfume lingering in the air long after she was gone. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be the pathetic husband waiting at home, hoping for scraps of attention. I wasn't going to fight for a woman who had already made her choice. No, I was going to find the truth. And then I was going to leave. For good. I don't know why I didn't confront her that night. Maybe I wanted to hold on to the illusion for just a little longer. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear the lies tumble from her lips. But something inside me had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling, that gnawing, sickening certainty that Emily was betraying me. And once that seed was planted, it started to grow. Every late night, every dismissive excuse, every fake smile she gave me when she walked through the door, I saw it all differently now. So I started watching. Not in an obvious way. I wasn't about to become some paranoid, jealous husband rifling through her phone or demanding answers she wouldn't give me. No, I needed to be smart. I needed proof. And that proof came sooner than I expected. It was a month before everything fell apart completely. Emily had stopped at the grocery store after work, and when she pulled into the driveway, she called me outside to help carry the bags in. I remember it so clearly. The cool evening air, the way the streetlights flickered against the windshield of her car, the sound of crickets in the distance. I opened the back door, grabbed a few bags, and that's when I saw it. Something pink, something just barely peeking out from under the passenger seat. My stomach dropped. I bent down, heart hammering against my ribs, and pulled it out. It was a bra. Her bra. I knew it was hers, not just because I recognized the style, but because Emily was always particular about her lingerie. She only bought from one specific boutique, and this was one of the expensive ones. I stared at it, my fingers gripping the delicate lace, my mind scrambling for an explanation. There wasn't one. Emily never changed in her car. She never threw her clothes around. So why was her bra shoved under the seat? My pulse pounded in my ears. I could hear my own breathing, slow and shaky, as I realized exactly what this meant. Someone had been in her car. Someone had taken this off of her, and she hadn't even bothered to hide the evidence. I shoved it into one of the grocery bags, my hands shaking. I couldn't let her see my reaction. Not yet. I needed time to think. As I walked back inside, Emily was putting things away in the kitchen. She turned to look at me and frowned. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced myself to breathe. "Yeah," I said, voice steady. "Just tired." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went back to unpacking the groceries. Like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just spent the evening with someone else. I stood there, watching her move around the kitchen, laughing at something on her phone, acting like the woman I thought I knew. But I knew better now. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sound of Emily's breathing beside me. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. She was cheating. And the worst part? I had no idea how long it had been going on. My mind started replaying everything I had overlooked. The way she'd been coming home later and later. The nights she barely touched me. The excuses that never really made sense. I should have confronted her right then. Demanded the truth. But what would that have done? She would lie. She would twist it. She would gaslight me until I was the bad guy for even questioning her. No, I needed to be patient. I needed to catch her in the act. And when I did, when I had undeniable proof, I was going to walk away. Without a fight, without a word, just like she had done to me. The bra was the first undeniable sign. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. Something concrete. Something that would leave no room for lies or manipulation. So I waited, and I watched. Emily had become predictable in her deception. She would come home late at least 3 times a week, always with the same excuse, a work dinner or team bonding. She spoke with such ease, such confidence, like she had rehearsed every word. And maybe she had. I didn't argue, didn't accuse. I just nodded, kissed her cheek, and let her walk right out the door. But I wasn't just sitting around anymore. That night, as she showered before heading out, I did something I never thought I'd do. I took my work phone, slipped it into her purse, and walked back to the living room like nothing had happened. I wasn't proud of it, but at that moment, I didn't care about pride. I cared about the truth. She came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming to herself as she got dressed. I watched her from the corner of my eye, taking in every detail, the way she straightened her dress, the perfume she dabbed on her wrists, the smile she flashed me before grabbing her purse and heading for the door. "Don't wait up," she said with a wink. I didn't plan to. The moment the door shut behind her, I grabbed my personal phone and opened the location tracker link to my work phone. A small blue dot appeared on the screen, moving steadily across the city. I sat there, watching, waiting. 15 minutes later, she stopped. Not at the restaurant she had mentioned. Not even close. She was at the Blue Ember, a bar downtown, one she had never mentioned before. My hands tightened into fists. This was it, the moment of truth. I grabbed my keys and left. The drive felt like it lasted forever. My mind raced through every possibility, every scenario. Maybe she really was meeting co-workers. Maybe I was wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I parked across the street and killed the engine. From my spot, I had a clear view of the entrance. I didn't have to wait long. Emily walked out, but she wasn't alone. A man followed her, tall, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that came from years of getting what he wanted. I recognized him from a few company events, one of the executives. And then he pulled her close. Her laugh was light, almost flirty, as he leaned in and kissed her. My stomach twisted. She didn't pull away. She didn't even hesitate. She kissed him back, her hands resting on his chest like she had done to me 100 times before. I felt my fingers clench around the steering wheel, my knuckles white with pressure. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. I wanted to get out, to walk over there and rip them apart. But I didn't. I waited, because they weren't done. A few minutes later, they got into his car and drove off. And I followed. The streets blurred past me as I trailed them, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. 10 minutes later, they pulled into a hotel parking lot. I watched as they got out, watched as he wrapped an arm around her waist, watched as they walked inside, side by side, disappearing through the entrance like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like this was routine, like this wasn't the first time. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. This was it, the proof I needed. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted, was in a hotel room with another man. I had been right all along. And yet, the confirmation didn't bring relief. It brought pain, a deep, hollow pain that made my chest feel like it was caving in. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make her feel even a fraction of what I felt in that moment. Instead, I sat there, silent, numb. And then, without thinking, I put my car in drive and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. Not anymore. Not ever again. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go home. Not to her. Not to the bed we had shared. Not to the place where I had once felt safe. The road stretched out in front of me, dark and empty, swallowed by the night. My knuckles ached from gripping the steering wheel too tightly, my breath shallow and uneven. My mind replayed what I had seen over and over again. Emily's smile, the way she leaned into him, the way they disappeared into that hotel without hesitation. How long had she been doing this? How many nights had I been home alone, thinking she was out with coworkers when she was really in a hotel room with another man? I clenched my jaw, my pulse thundering in my ears. I wanted to hit something, to break something, but what was the point? She had already broken everything. 30 miles outside of town, I pulled into a small roadside tavern. It was the kind of place that smelled like old wood and cheap whiskey, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Perfect. I walked inside, my boots heavy against the floorboards, and slid onto a bar stool. The bartender, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes, took one look at me and smirked. "Rough night?" she asked. I huffed out a bitter laugh. Something like that. She poured me a drink without another word, and I downed it in one go. The burn in my throat was nothing compared to the fire raging inside my chest. I barely noticed the man who sat down beside me. "Looks like you just lost everything," he said, his voice deep and calm. I turned, sizing him up. He was older, maybe in his mid-50s, dressed in a worn leather jacket. He had the kind of face that had seen things that changed a man. "Yeah," I muttered. "Something like that." He nodded, as if he understood. And maybe he did. I don't remember how it started, but before long, I was talking, pouring it all out. The late nights, the excuses, the pink bra under the seat, the hotel. The moment I saw her kiss another man. He listened, didn't interrupt. Just let me speak until I had nothing left to say. Then he leaned back, took a sip of his drink, and said something I'll never forget. "So what now?" I blinked at him. "What do you mean?" "You can drown in it," he said, setting his glass down. "Let it eat you alive. Or you can walk away." I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around my empty glass. "I don't know where to go," I admitted. The man, his name was Ryan, studied me for a long moment, then shrugged. "I've got an old trailer out on my land," he said. "It ain't much, but it's quiet. Peaceful. If you need a place to clear your head, it's yours." I stared at him, unsure if he was serious. "Why would you do that?" He smirked. "Because I've been where you are, kid. And sometimes you just need to get the hell away." I didn't answer right away. The idea of leaving, really leaving, had never felt so real before. Up until that moment, I had been operating on pure instinct, reacting to my world as it crumbled around me. But Ryan was giving me a choice. Stay and drown, or walk away. I thought about Emily, about the lies, the betrayal. I thought about our apartment, filled with memories that now felt like a cruel joke. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. I nodded. "Tell me where it is." Ryan grinned and clinked his glass against mine. "Good choice." That night, I didn't go home. I didn't call Emily. Didn't check my phone. I just drove. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally in control. And for the first time since discovering the truth, I could finally breathe. I didn't go home that night. For hours, I drove with no real destination, just letting the dark highway stretch endlessly before me. But as the miles ticked by, one thing became clear: I wasn't staying. Not in that apartment. Not in that marriage. Not in the life I had so blindly built with Emily. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, the decision had settled deep in my bones. I was done. The next morning, I called Ryan. "Still serious about that offer?" I asked, my voice rough from a sleepless night. "Absolutely," he replied without hesitation. I didn't even go inside the apartment right away. Instead, I sat in my car across the street, watching our home. The place that once felt safe, now nothing more than a collection of walls trapping me in a lie. Emily had already left for work, no doubt texting her good morning messages to the man she had spent the night with. Good. That gave me time. I didn't pack in a panic. I didn't rush. Instead, I moved methodically, grabbing only the essentials: clothes, my laptop, important documents. Everything else, I left it. The furniture, the decorations we picked out together, even the damn wedding photos hanging on the walls. I didn't want any of it. Every item in that apartment felt tainted now, stained by her betrayal. By the end of the day, my car was packed, my keys sat on the counter, and a single note rested on the kitchen table. It wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. Just 6 words, scrawled in black ink. I hope it was worth it. On top of the note, I placed my wedding ring. A final goodbye. I stood there for a moment, taking in the emptiness, the eerie silence of what had once been my home. Then I walked out the door, and I never looked back. The drive to Ryan's land was long, but I barely noticed. My mind was too full. Flashes of memories, pieces of conversations, all the signs I had ignored. But beneath the anger, the pain, the disbelief, there was something else. Relief. I was free. By the time I pulled onto Ryan's property, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the land. His trailer was simple. Nothing fancy, nothing special. But it was mine now. Mine. A place untouched by Emily, by lies, by the life I had just left behind. Ryan was waiting when I arrived, leaning against his truck with a beer in hand. "Thought you might change your mind," he said with a smirk. I shook my head. "Not a chance." He clapped a hand on my shoulder and nodded. "Then welcome home, kid." It wasn't much, but for the first time in a long time, it was exactly where I needed to be. For a year, I lived in peace. Out in the hills, surrounded by nothing but open land and quiet, I started to heal. The mornings smelled like fresh pine. The nights were filled with the sound of crickets and the occasional coyote howling in the distance. It was simple, it was real, and it was mine. I had cut Emily out of my life completely, ignored her texts, deleted her voicemails, never responded to the emails that started as desperate apologies and gradually turned into bitter accusations. But I knew it wasn't over. A part of me had always known. And then one afternoon it happened. I was in town, picking up groceries when I stopped by my usual coffee shop to use the free Wi-Fi. It was a small place, the kind where the baristas knew your name, where the smell of fresh-baked pastries lingered in the air. I had just finished answering a few work emails when I stepped outside, heading toward my truck. Then I heard it, a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. "Jason." I froze. For a second, I thought I had imagined it, that my mind was playing some cruel trick on me. But then I turned, and there she was, Emily, standing across the street, looking straight at me. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, just like she used to wear it when we were together. She was dressed casually, white shorts, a tank top, but everything about her felt deliberate, like she had planned this moment. I didn't move, didn't speak. She took a hesitant step forward, her eyes scanning me, searching for something. "I've been looking for you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. I had imagined this moment 100 different ways, thought about what I would say if I ever saw her again. But now that she was standing in front of me, I felt nothing but a deep, steady calm. "Why?" I asked. My voice was flat, emotionless. She swallowed hard. "Can we talk?" I should have said no. Should have walked away right then and there. But something in her eyes, something desperate, something broken, made me pause. "Fine," I muttered. "But not here." We found a quiet bench down the street, away from the crowd. She sat first, folding her hands in her lap, like she was afraid of what I might say. I stayed standing for a moment, watching her, waiting. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I said nothing. She took a shaky breath. "I messed up, Jason. I lost everything. I needed to see you." I clenched my jaw. "You lost everything? Or you lost him?" I asked, my voice sharp. Her face crumpled. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Emily?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. She looked down, twisting her hands together. "After you left, everything fell apart," she admitted. "Work found out about the affair. The office turned against me. He blamed me for everything. His fiancée found out, and she left him. It was a mess." I let out a bitter laugh. "Karma's a bitch, huh?" Her eyes flashed with hurt, but she didn't argue. "I thought I was making the right choice," she murmured. "I thought I could have both. My career, my freedom, and—" I shook my head. "You thought you could lie, and that I'd be too blind to see it." She blinked quickly, tears welling up. I wasn't lying about everything. I loved you, Jason. I still don't. I cut her off. A long silence stretched between us. Then she swallowed and straightened up, her voice shaking. Would you ever consider trying again? I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. No, Emily. I wouldn't. Her face crumbled, and for the first time I saw it, the regret, the weight of what she had done. She had destroyed something she could never fix. I deserve that, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, you do. She wiped at her eyes, then stood up slowly. If I had told you the truth back then, do you think— It doesn't matter, I said, cutting her off. Because it didn't. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. Goodbye, Jason, she murmured. I watched her turn, watched her walk away. And as I sat there, feeling the cool breeze against my skin, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free. For the first time since it all began, I was truly, completely free. After Emily walked away that day, I sat on that bench for a long time, staring into the distance. I expected to feel something— anger, regret, maybe even a small part of me wanting to turn around and chase after her. But there was nothing. No pain, no longing, just the quiet realization that it was truly over. I had won, not in some childish, vengeful way, but in the way that truly mattered. I had walked away, built something new for myself, and left her to deal with the wreckage she had created. I drove back to my trailer with the windows down, letting the wind rush through, carrying away the last lingering weight of my past. The hills stretched out around me, the fading sun casting long golden shadows over the land. This was my life now. Simple, real, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. A few days later, I got an email from her. I almost deleted it without reading it, but something made me open it. It was long. Pages of apologies, reflections, regrets. She talked about how much she missed me, how she wished she could undo everything. And at the very end, she asked if I would be willing to meet her again, spend a weekend together, maybe even start fresh. I didn't hesitate. I hit delete and blocked her email. That was it. The final goodbye. For good this time. Life didn't stop for me. Over the months, I threw myself into work, into fixing up the trailer, into getting stronger, physically, mentally, emotionally. The nightmares stopped. The memories faded. And one day, something happened that I hadn't expected. I met someone. It was stupid, really. A random Tuesday afternoon, and I was out on a trail run near the hills, lost in thought, when I spotted a woman standing beside her car on the side of the road, frowning at a flat tire. I could have ignored it, could have kept running, but something about her, maybe the way she muttered to herself in frustration, maybe the way she kicked the tire lightly as if that would fix it, made me stop. Need a hand? I asked. She looked up, startled, then let out a breath. That obvious, huh? I grinned. A little. She laughed, and just like that, something clicked. It wasn't some instant, overwhelming attraction like I had felt with Emily all those years ago. It was better. It was real. Her name was Claire. She was a few years younger than me, full of energy and curiosity about the world. She wasn't perfect, but she was kind, honest, and she had no idea about my past. With her, I wasn't the man who had been cheated on. I was just Jason. Over time, she started calling me her mountain man, teasing me about my simple life, about how I had traded city noise for solitude. But the thing was, I loved it. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from something. I wasn't drowning in betrayal or pain or resentment. I was just living, and it felt damn good. I know that not everyone gets the chance to walk away the way I did. I know that some people get trapped in the anger, in the need for closure, in the endless cycle of what-ifs. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to stay. You don't have to keep hurting. You don't have to waste your life on someone who threw you away. You can leave. You can rebuild. You can find peace. And if you're lucky, you might even find something better. I did, and I'm never looking back. Looking back, I see now that life doesn't always give you the answers you want. Sometimes it gives you pain. Sometimes it takes everything you thought was certain and shatters it. But in that wreckage, you have a choice. You can stay there, angry, bitter, demanding explanations that won't change a damn thing. where you can stand up, turn your back on the past, and walk forward into something better. I won't lie, leaving wasn't easy. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I ever thought possible. But staying? That would have destroyed me. I would have spent years begging for honesty from someone who never valued it, trying to fix something that was already beyond saving. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, here's what I'll tell you. Walk away with your dignity intact. Don't chase people who already let you go. Don't waste your years waiting for an apology that won't heal you. Instead, build something new. Find peace in the simple things. Surround yourself with people who bring value to your life. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't anger. It's moving on and doing it so well, they'll wish they never let you go.